I was going to say, why do I have a guy from Metal Blade Records here? Because Brian used to host the, the Metal Misconduct? No, which was the name?
Metal Misconduct.
Right? I didn't want to make sure I didn't screw that up. Podcast with a good friend back in the day, Sean Rourke of NHL.com, and you guys don't do it anymore, but that's how I sort of met you, the connection there. But just, how did you meet Sean and get into having that podcast? And I know you're a big hockey guy, but how'd that all start?
Well, it's a whole hockey story, actually. So there was a team in Miami called the Miami Manatees. They were part of the WHA2, which is this tiny little minor league back in the day. And one of my buddies who worked at Metal Blade was from down there, and he got me in touch with the people doing the team. So we sponsored the team. They played our metal music and everything. And the guy that was kind of coordinating everything was this guy named Mark Fischel. Mark Fischel ended up working at the NHL, selling ticketing, and he said, hey, you should meet this guy, Sean Rourke, who works here. He's a huge metalhead. So I got to meet Sean, and we became friends with a bunch of those NHL.com guys. And one day Sean said, hey, we should do a podcast. I go, well, like, what do you mean? Like, we should do a podcast and talk to hockey players. I go, how are we going to get like 15 minutes out of them, let alone like half an hour? These guys don't talk. So no, trust me, when we talk music, they'll be into it. So the first guy we had on was Drew Stafford, who was playing for the Sabres at the time, or the Rangers, I can't remember which team. But he's notorious for doing like terrible interviews. We talked for like over an hour. He knew more about metal than I did. And afterwards, Sean goes like, whenever I interview you after a game, I get nothing from you. Why an hour? He says, because I'm talking about music and I love it. So that's why I met Sean.
That's funny. And just so people know, I know I don't know, maybe you don't get sick of ever hearing this, but, Brian was on the ground floor as a young guy of discovering Metallica, I guess, helping push, them to get a major label deal. It was on you had an original, like, LP.
Compilation album, yeah.
That they were on, the Metal Massacre.
Metal Massacre 1, and yes. Rat was on there, and a whole bunch of other metal bands, too.
So that's just so people kind of get a sense. It's almost like me, like, everyone in college hockey knows who I am, but, like, if I step out to any other world, no one knows who the hell I am at all. Yeah. And, like, everyone in metal knows you, and, like, I'd imagine, like, people here who, like, don't like metal, like, who's this guy? So,
yeah. There's some I'm in the hockey world randomly enough that there's a few, but...
Yeah. But I was going to say, like, I think, to me, like, hard rock and hockey always went together for the longest time. But now, when you talk to players down, inevitably, like, hey, what music you listen to these days in the locker room? Everybody's listening to hip-hop and country.
Yep.
And I'm like, what happened? It bugs me.
Yeah, it's weird because, like rock and metal now is the number 2 most popular genre of music in the world. So, and there used to be a lot of hockey players that would play metal. One of my good friends, Dan Boyle, played years. I went to Miami, and a lot of those guys. But now they're few and far between, unfortunately.
Right. What is up with that?
But they still play it. I mean, still every game we're going to hear. Today we're going to hear 30 metal songs probably between the two games. So,
right.
I don't know.
In that matter?
Yeah, no.
Do they know
I wish.
You're a season ticket holder for the Knights, right?
Of course, of course. The Knights and the Stars, actually.
Oh, right. Because, yes, I know you. But the goal, how long have you lived in Vegas?
So I've been here 9 years now, almost 10.
Like, that's the other thing I should tell people. I call Brian the mayor of Vegas, but the unofficial mayor of Vegas.
Yeah, I'm one of them.
It's amazing how many. It's almost like I have a son who lives in Nashville, and a lot of rock stars, recording artists, it's not just for country anymore. They go there. There's a lot of great recording studios. Likewise, this is what I get all the time.
I like it.
But likewise, and I don't know if they record here, but a lot of rock artists have moved here.
Yep. There's a bunch of really good studios out here as well, and it's kind of like Nashville and Vegas are the 2 spots that most like rock and metal guys are going to gravitate towards one or the other because it's cheaper, it's nicer. Certainly Nashville has a bigger scene there, but there's a pretty big scene here in Vegas, especially for rock music, and there's 3 or 4 really good studios out here as well.
I guess I was leading to my question with the players, kids today, quote unquote.
Yeah, right.
But whenever I've talked to you and pushed you on this, like the record business or the music business, you always were a little more optimistic than I was. That and obviously you own a record label, so you would know. Like it's not as bad as I perceive it to be. The business is pretty good still.
Like I said, recently it's a long story, but basically there's a company that dissects all the global music sales, and right now hip hop and rap is number 1. rock is number 2, pop is number 3, and country is number 4. So we're number 2, and a lot of that is metal. We have a band like Ghost and Sleep Token, both had number 1 records on Billboard. So it's coming back around. There's a lot of younger kids into it. We got to get the athletes though into it. We don't have enough of those. There's a few, but not enough.
What is your? I know I've read the Jaromir Jagr story, which I mean, if you can briefly summarize that, but like, what is your favorite? Rock and metal, hockey and metal connection story.
There's strangely enough, there's so many of them. I love when my worlds collide. But the Jagr story, really quickly, friends of mine used to work for Stan Fischler, and he floated the idea that I was going to introduce Jagr to Metallica, because Jagger's a huge Metallica fan, and sure enough, I ended up making it happen. So I took Jagr and a couple of Penguins players to meet Metallica when they're in the studio recording Load, but I couldn't figure out who was more excited, like the hockey guys or the band, because like James...
Those guys are big hockey guys.
Oh, huge. Like James Hetfield's going, Jagr signed my hockey stick, and they're freaking out. So that was a lot of fun, but there's a ton of that stuff. And I'm here today, it's in Vegas, which I love, but I'm a huge fan of this tournament. I've been going to this tournament for probably 35, 40 years almost. I used to go to the ECACs in the Hockey East when it was at Boston Garden. I think I've been to 12 of the Frozen Fours.
By the way.
I know. It's on my list. I've been to a bunch of Frozen Fours. I haven't been to one for a minute, so it's great that it's here, but I absolutely love college hockey. It's one of my favorites.
I was going to say my favorite connection on that story is I was working in Philadelphia. I used to work for the Flyers and the Phantoms. And when Yanni Niinema skipped out on a practice to go to a Metallica concert, they did in the parking lot of the old Wells Fargo Center.
I've got a Yanni Niinema story for you. So he was such a big fan. He was a big fan of one of our bands, Cannibal Corpse, and he actually went out on the road with them for like 4 or 5 days. And they're just telling me stories like he would have so much fun. He would actually end up passed out on their bus just on the floor. They'd be getting up in the morning and go, who's like, this NHL player is like lying on our bus floor passed out. So he's a riot.
Are there any who's the last guy that you've gotten to know that? I'm trying to think who,
there's my good friend Mike McKenna, who played at college and played in the NHL and AHL for years in St. Louis. He's a huge fan, but there's not a lot of younger guys doing it now that I've heard of. There's a couple. I'm trying to think. So the big one is the Flyers goaltender.
Currently?
Yeah, he's got a Metallica helmet.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know that.
Dan Vladar.
Oh, right. Yeah.
He's got a Metallica helmet, like with a whole bunch of metal stuff on it, so he's a big metal guy. But a lot of those goalies are metalheads, but they're very shy. Like Tuukka Rask is a huge metalhead. And we tried for years to get him on our podcast, but he wouldn't do it because he didn't want to really talk about it. Yeah, so there's a few out there. But
goalies are always weird.
Yeah, but I love goalies. They're smart. They know good music.
No, it's every year, I swear, they have the press conferences on Wednesday, and they'll have, used to be, Guns N' Roses, Judas Priest. You talk to a player, even though they were younger. Oh yeah, we love that. Nowadays, you ask them that question, they look at you like you have 5 heads.
I've got another good, just to remember this. So a couple of years ago, here in Vegas, the NHL does their media days before the season. So the NHL, I've done a bunch of work for them off and on here, thanks to Sean and Bill Price and the other guys over at NHL.com. So they had me interview some players, and they had me interview Jack Eichel, because Eichel's a huge rock and metal guy.
Nice.
So we were talking about Metallica and like the Doobie Brothers and all this crazy stuff. And I go, how does a guy, you're 26. How do you know who the Doobie Brothers are? His parents. I got good parenting. But we talked for 15 minutes. He was awesome. Yeah. And at the end of it, he goes, this is the most fun I've had in a long time doing an interview. So, that you can listen to that, by the way. It's somewhere, NHL.com is it somewhere up on their site.
I'm always trying because I'm in the locker rooms here, because I want to have that fun conversation, but I know nothing about hip hop and country, so
it'll come back. Like I said earlier, we're seeing it come back now, where it's the younger kids, because they're older brothers, like hockey player age kids, college age kids now. They're all into country or whatever else, but this generation below that are starting to I don't want to listen to what they're listening to. I want something heavier and more cool. So it's coming back, hopefully.
I watch the Rick Beato channel on YouTube. I don't know if you know who Rick Beato is.
I know.
He's really good at breaking stuff down, and it's like, but you feel like old man yelling at the clouds, because it's always like all this AI stuff is coming in, and look, I remember when I was a kid, my parents thought my music was crap, and now I think kids today's music is crap. But really though, but I always say, like, it's out there, right? Like, if the stuff is out there, it's just harder to find. Like, it's not on the radio. Like, I don't drive to work and hear the same thing every day.
And there's not one place you can go to find it. You can go to, Spotify and iTunes playlists and stuff, but there's not one specific thing yet. But I do find lately that it took us a long time to break bands. Like, sometimes it could take 15, 20 years before you really get a band up there. It's a lot quicker now because the networks of stuff happening is better. And believe it or not, one of the biggest drivers of that is TikTok.
Oh, really?
Like, TikTok is blowing stuff up. Like I mentioned that band Ghost before. They were headlining, they were headlining like 8,000, 10,000 seat arenas. They had something go crazy on TikTok, go viral on TikTok. Now they're selling out arenas all over the world. So the band called Lorna Shore, it's a real heavy band. They went viral on TikTok, and now they're doing like 15,000 seat arenas. So TikTok's driving that, it's driving the younger kids and a lot of heavy music. So
it used to be too where like, if you did like a car commercial, you're a sellout. But nowadays, do you have to do that kind of stuff? Do your bands have to do like video games, like soundtracks?
They're involved in all that sort of stuff. I don't think there's any sort of selling out unless it's like some big corporate thing, more or less. Which they're not going to ask any of our bands to do that stuff. But they're in major movies and stuff, and you just never know. We had famously Cannibal Corpse in the first Ace Ventura movie. And when they were wanting to do that, I'm not sure that's a good idea because they're an underground death metal fan, but they did it. Now they're still massively huge, but it's just now they're in part of pop culture now, so you never know.
As Brian refers to Cannibal Corpse, hopefully not making half our audience run away like with those kind of names. But like it's funny because like
come on, they're in Ace Ventura.
No, but that's what I was gonna say. Like I grew up a big metal guy. I mean, not so much the death metal and the heavy. Like I always say, Metallica is sort of where I drew the line. But like, what draws me to it was the community and like how almost like tweaking society. Like it's not what people think. Like these are like some of the nicest guys, in the world. And I love like
100%.
Twisting people into like having different expectation. That's just, I don't know, that's how I always
just to give you an example of that, so I mentioned Cannibal Corpse, right? Who's, one of the biggest death metal band of all time, and their lyrics and stuff are pretty crazy. People are like, what are they like? They do crazy stuff on the bus. I walked on the bus one day, and they were watching Oprah. I mean, they're just normal, regular guys.
The only time I was ever backstage at a rock, I had a friend in college whose brother was Tom Kiefer.
Oh, yeah, Cinderella. Yeah.
So this is like late 80s, where I was in college. Took us backstage, and I'm like, we're going to see some hedonism back here. They were lying on the couch watching Mama's Family.
Yeah. That's how exciting backstage in the buses are these days. Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, look, there are stories. There's plenty of stories, but
more so in the 80s than now. But yeah.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about before you go, and I appreciate I want to get to your seat, watch this game. It's going to be great games. Is that you have this jersey collection? You still have that?
I still have it. In fact, I have an entire house out here that houses it.
How does that work? Like, is it just a museum, basically?
Kind of. I just got into collecting hockey jerseys in the 2000s when eBay first started, and I could buy game-worn minor league jerseys for like $10. So I just started amassing this collection. At one point, it got up to almost 3,000, and I purged about 800 of them and gave them to my good buddies at Violent Gentlemen, and we just we sold them for cheap for charity and all this sort of stuff. But I still have over 2,000. About 800 of them are game-worn, and they're anywhere from college to minor league to NHL, all over the place. I've got sticks, I got pucks, I got you name it, I got it.
Not that you're looking to sell this stuff, but I mean, what would be considered the most valuable?
It's a good question. I mean, I've got a signed Gretzky. It's not game worn, but a signed Gretzky All-Star jersey from New York. That's pretty good. I got a signed Lemieux jersey from when they won the Stanley Cup. I got a signed Yager jersey from the same time. No, those aren't game worn, but they're still pretty rare jerseys. So those are pretty rare. I've got a Gordie Howe signed jersey, which is a whole nother crazy story. Some band wanted to get signed to Metal Blade, and their family knew Gordie Howe.
Oh, right.
So they had him autographed. So probably those were probably the most value. But some of those game warns now, even the minor league stuff still goes for a lot of money. It's crazy.
Well, listen, I appreciate it. I'm like the players because I talk about hockey all year long. So whenever I see, I want to talk about music, and you want to talk about hockey because you talk, so. But I appreciate the chat. Enjoy the game.
Anytime, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So good.
Always
luck.
Good to see you, sir.
Yeah, we'll see you again later, I'm sure. Yeah.